Scripture lesson for today comes from the Gospel of John, from the 5th chapter, and we read verses 2 through 9. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Hebrew called Bethesda, which has 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew that he had been lying there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is troubled, and while I am going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your pallet and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his pallet and walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. This past week, there was a story on the news about the release of a group of chimpanzees. The chimps had been living at a lab facility for the last 30 years, having tests conducted on them. The animals were kept in enclosures, separated from one another, sometimes with wooden structures to climb on, but most often not. Unable to look up at the sky or feel the ground beneath their feet. The news report included a video of the chimps making their way back out into the real world that they had known at one time, but had been so long confined that they had forgotten. It was amazing to watch these creatures as they stared up into the sky with awe and wonder, as they explored the vast expanses of grassy fields, as they once again naturally climbed trees, as they began to socialize, grooming and embracing one another. It was amazing to watch them relearn what it meant to be free after so long living without it. Our story today is about imprisonment and about freedom. It is about figurative prisons as well as literal ones. It's about a healing pool at a place called Bethesda in our Bibles. But scholars almost unanimously agree that the location of the pool is actually Bethesda, which means house of mercy or house of grace. It's a story about Jesus and a man that he encounters at that pool. Now, in truth, the story is much more about the man than it is about Jesus. Jesus in this story does exactly what we expect him to do. He offers healing. But the man does not do what we might expect. So let's take a closer look at him. The man has been lying at the pool of Bethesda for 38 years. He has come here to this place because the waters of the pool were supposed to have some healing power, at least for those who got in first. Now, before we think that that's just some silly superstition, remember where we are and how many healing springs are actually here around us. This man has laid there by the waters, hoping to be healed. But notice he hasn't really worked toward getting healed. I find it hard to believe that in 38 years, no one has come and offered to help him get in the pool. I also find it hard to believe that this man has actually spent 38 years here knowing he will never be the first in the pool without help. And yet he has not started to think about other options for healing, other places he might go, other avenues to get well. Even when Jesus comes and asks if he wants to be healed, he does not respond by saying yes, but instead gives an excuse as to why he hasn't been healed already. He is hesitant to become well. He has been institutionalized in his sickness. In truth, his sickness is gaining him something. After all, the temple is not that far away, and travelers would have passed by him many, many times, seeking healing for themselves or simply going to the temple. Perhaps he is getting all that he needs right here where he is. Perhaps these good church folks and well-to-do travelers have thrown him enough scraps to get by, and that has come to be enough. The statistics on criminals who reoffend after they've been released from prison are astounding. On average, 1 in 3 will be back in jail within 1 year's time. The numbers are higher for adults than they are for juveniles. They're even higher for those who have been in prison longer, and the length of time served doesn't even have to be all that long. After only 2.5 years in prison, almost 55% of people will reoffend after they're released, and most of those fairly quickly. They will have become so acclimated and accustomed to the regimented life behind bars that they no longer know how to live outside of that system. They will have adjusted so well to being told exactly when to eat, sleep, and exercise that they find themselves unable to make those decisions when they're given the chance to do so. It doesn't take long for us to learn a new way of life. It doesn't take long for us to imprison ourselves. One of the best and worst phrases we can ever use in this world is, I am. Think about that for a second. Every day at some point we say this, either out loud to someone else or out loud to ourselves when no one else is around, or silently in our minds. I am. And I'll ask you to fill in the blank, because whatever comes next has a tremendous amount of power. I am loved. I am good. I am smart. I am blessed. I am sick. I am stupid. I am useless. I am disabled. I am old. The more we say it to ourselves, the truer it becomes. There are a lot of folks in this world who have imprisoned themselves with this kind of self-talk. Lots of folks who believe that they are that one word and nothing else. Lots of folks who define themselves by a condition or a sickness or a situation. Lots of folks who believe their own press and never move past it. Lots of folks who are so terrified to look for change or healing or freedom from their past that they cannot live without the very thing they do not wish to be. To take that away is to take away their identity. We in the church have done much the same. All we hear lately is a bunch of negative self-talk about the state of our denomination. We are failing. We are losing the battle. We are dying. I've been here in Shenandoah Presbytery for 5 years, and in all of those 5 years, we've been struggling to figure out our vision for the future. And as yet, we are no closer to discerning that bright and glorious future. Surveys have been conducted. Conversations have occurred. Committees have been formed. Every new idea or proposal brought before the presbytery has been shot down. We are comfortable where we are. And then Jesus comes along. And Jesus asks this man at Bethesda, do you want to be made well? And then ignoring that lame guy's excuse, not waiting for him to actually say yes, Jesus tells him to take up his mat and walk. Take up your mat. Leave nothing here for you to fall back on. Take it with you so that you will have no reason to return to this place of suffering and self-pity. Do you want to be made well? Jesus is asking us the same question today. Do we want to move on from things that have held us back? Do we want to take up our mats and walk to a new place? I hate to compare us to chimps. I really do. But I will tell you that the very first thing that those chimpanzees did when the doors to their enclosure was opened was to hesitate. They stood huddled in the doorway, crowding around and peering outside, unsure of what to do next. But then they stepped out into a whole new world. God is calling us to do the same. Jesus is begging us to do the same. He's asking us to take that first difficult step. He's asking us to trust that each step after that one gets just a little easier. And if we take enough steps, we will look back at where we were and wonder what we ever saw in that old prison. And we will laugh, and we will dance, and we will embrace one another and open ourselves up to a whole new world of possibilities. If only we could be so daring. If only we could be so courageous. It's as if we hear the words of that old gospel song but can't actually believe that they are true. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to save the sin-sick soul. Do you want to be made well? Then take up your mat and walk. And now to God alone be all honor